French was the hardest part of moving to France for me. Welcome back to the Americans in Paris channel. My name is Molly Sabrier, and today we are going to be talking about my learning French journey. Okay, well, maybe it wasn't the hardest part, but it was definitely one of the hardest parts. I had taken a couple semesters of French at college, but I didn't really retain anything, I would say. And then I did my semester abroad in Paris, and that's when I actually started really learning French. But even when I was doing my semester abroad, I'll be the first to admit that I wasn't really taking my classes seriously. I was only hanging out with other American students, so I wasn't learning any French like in my real life there. And the host mom, like the family where I was living when I was a student, she knew from the get-go that I didn't speak any French, so she was comfortable enough speaking a little bit of English with me. And also, Paris is a metropolitan city, so a lot of people speak English in shops and restaurants and that sort of thing. So when I was doing my semester abroad, I really stayed in that English-speaking bubble that we can kind of talk about a lot on this channel. And it was a very comfortable place to be, but I did not learn much French when I was living there for my semester abroad. So when I came back to France for part 2, I still didn't know any French. I came back to France originally in the beginning to be an au pair, and I was actually brought on to only speak in American English with the children I was taking care of. They didn't tell me that I wasn't allowed to speak in French, but it was kind of this unspoken thing, like, we brought you here to speak American English with our children, so please speak in American English with our children. But I will say, when I was an au pair and living in a French-speaking household, I was immersed in the language. I had started to become kind of like a sponge, and I was just soaking everything up kind of subconsciously, because in the beginning of my au pair journey, I also was very much in my English-speaking bubble with other au pairs, with other international students. Again, I was very comfortable there. I felt very safe there. So it was very easy for me to kind of want to stay there. But I will say, the children that I was taking care of, they would watch French TV shows, they would watch French movies, they would speak amongst themselves in French. So I was definitely exposed to a lot more French than, say, when I was studying at my local university in Rhode Island in the United States. And that's why I say that the only real way to learn French, or the only real way to learn any sort of language, is to spend an extended amount of time in a country or a place where people speak the language that you're trying to learn. I'll get more into this a little bit later in the video, but the way people actually speak French in France is totally different from the way we are taught how to speak French when we're taking these very formal French classes in the United States or anywhere else in the world. So as I'm soaking up all of this French chatter that's going on around me as I'm an au pair, I was actually also taking French classes at the time. But again, I'll be honest with you, I wasn't taking them very seriously, I wasn't really studying, and I really wasn't practicing. So finally, at the end of my au pair stint, I decided that I was ready to stay in France, and at that point I knew it was going to be really important for me to actually learn how to speak the language, for a couple different reasons. A, I wanted to integrate much more fully into real French culture, real French life. I wanted French friends. I wanted to be able to speak in French with these French friends. So sort of maybe like a social reason, but it was also important for what I wanted to do in France and what I planned to do to continue to stay there, because I wanted to get my master's. And in order to get my master's in France, I needed to prove that I had a certain level of French in order to be accepted into the French public university that I wanted to go to. And so for that reason, that is what really started my I'm learning French and I'm actually going to learn French journey. And so as soon as I knew I had to have this level of French in order to be accepted into the master's program that I wanted to go to, then started my how am I going to get this certificate mission. I ended up finding a couple schools in Paris that taught French as a foreign language, and they had these programs where you would be given the certificate of your level of French at the end of it. One of them was at La Sorbonne. That's where I wanted to go initially. It's a very famous university. It's very well known. I had actually taken classes there when I was doing my semester abroad, so I was familiar with it, but I actually missed the deadline to enroll. So I had to turn to my second choice, which was Nanterre University. University, which if you've been following along, you know that is the school that I ended up going to for these intensive French courses and also going to get my master's degree. Now, if you are interested in coming to France to learn French and you're hoping to get a visa to do that, a program like Nanterre, their FET program, F-E-T-E, it's basically like an acronym for French as a foreign language. It's a degree granting program, and it also gives you the hours, like the course hours you're required to have in order to apply for the student visa. It's also an FLE accredited school, also very important for getting the student visa. So I was able to learn French, get their certificate, and stay in France, all because I found this one school at Nanterre. So like Nanterre, I owe you so much. Okay, so I knew that I needed a B2 level for the master's program that I wanted to apply for. So when I started this intensive French program at Nanterre, I managed to somehow scrape my way to A2. And if you're unfamiliar with it, this is all these letters and numbers, they're all refer to different levels of French. There's A1, which is very, very beginner, then you move up to A2. B1 is considered intermediate, and then you can move up to B2. C1 is considered like almost mastering it, and that goes all the way up to C2, which is considered totally fluent bilingual. And so I knew I wanted to get from A2 to B2, so that would be 1 year of this intensive French course, because basically each semester you kind of went up a different level. And I just have so many good things to say about the program that I chose. The teachers were all incredible. I remember the professor on the very first day walking in and all in, rapid French was basically like, I better not hear you speaking any other language except for French in my classroom. And in the beginning at the time, it felt very harsh and very like, whoa, okay, she means business. But I'm so grateful to her for that, because I happen to be the only Anglophone English speaker in the room anyway, so French was the only common language that I had with my classmates, so I was kind of forced to speak in French anyway. But the fact that we were literally not allowed to speak in our native tongue, our mother language, it meant that if I wanted to communicate at all with my classmates, it would have to be in French, no matter how broken, no matter how many mistakes we were making, no matter how bad our accents were, it had to be in French. And the fact that everyone around me had the same level that I did, they had the same speaking level, the same reading level, everything, that meant that they were probably going to be making the same mistakes as I would. It meant that they probably were going to have kind of a horrible accent like I did too. And that was another big piece of the learning French puzzle for me. I am a little bit more reserved and shy and timid, whatever you want to call it, in English, a language I have known since I started speaking. Now, imagine someone with my personality learning a foreign language where, right off the bat, you're kind of putting yourself in a vulnerable position where people can make fun of you, people might not understand what you're trying to say. It takes a certain level of confidence to speak another language, especially in the beginning when you're first getting started and you're making mistakes and what you want to say doesn't come out the right way. You really have to not care what people are going to say about you. I have a problem with that in English, so learning to get over that kind of complex that I had created in my own mind was very difficult. And the best way to get over it for me was to put myself in a situation where I was forced to speak in French, but I was doing it around people that were the same level that I was. And honestly, I started seeing improvement very, very quickly, and it was almost like the linchpin that allowed me to kind of like drop this complex that I had created for myself, not care what people thought, try my best even though I know I was going to make mistakes, try my best even though I knew I was going to have an accent and everything like that. And that confidence kind of compounded into more confidence, kind of compounded into me learning more vocabulary, compounded into me practicing more. And so my mouth was becoming more comfortable moving in a way that was so foreign for me at the time, all of these different things started compounding all at once. And so by my second semester, I felt like I had made such a huge stride in my French. And so I finished that degree, I got my B2 level certificate, and I applied for my master's program at Nanterre. I was accepted, and right around this time, I met my now husband, who is French. And although he can speak English, we have only ever really communicated in French. Like if we're in a room and we're with only, other English speakers, we're obviously going to be speaking in English. We're not going to be like the rude people whispering in French in the corner. But other than that, we communicate in French, I would say probably 95% of the time, which helped me so much. It helped me learn how to actually speak like a French person. It helped me have more confidence. It helped me learn more vocabulary. It just got me more used to speaking in French. The way people actually speak in France is totally different from the way we are taught French. Like I said, I did that big year of intensive French, and that was a really good foundation for me. It was a really good baseline. I learned a lot about grammar. I learned how to form a sentence properly. But vocabulary-wise, I would say I learned the most by just speaking with and interacting with French people. And I was able to do that because I was babysitting for French families. I was living in France. I was living in Paris. And so every time I walked into a store, I was speaking in French. Every time there was, a sign anywhere, basically it was always written in French. That was something that I did very early on that I found very helpful. Whenever I would see anything written in French, I would read it to myself in my mind, just to get used to the pronunciation, to get used to how things are spelled and how things are written and all of that kind of stuff. Being in this relationship with my husband, Pierre, being around his family, basically none of my in-laws speak English, so I'm always speaking in French with them. And that's how I discovered how to actually speak in French. I have never ever heard a French person say comme ci, comme ça. I've never heard someone say comment allez-vous. It's very formal, it's very literal. I think taking French courses like that really helps with my reading. But the way a French novel is written is not the way that, me and my husband and our French friends talk when we're hanging out on a Friday night. And honestly, it's the same way in English. The way that we speak in English, it's not, exactly as Shakespeare wrote. It's much more casual, it's much more familiar. And I really was able to learn the more familiar French once I was actually hanging out with real French people. So at the end of the day, for me, the key to learning French is a combination of 3 things: practice, patience, and confidence. Practice because you just need your mouth and your tongue and your teeth and your brain to get used to forming these words, to get used to forming these sounds. Now, after that comes patience, because it's not instant. You're not going to take a week of French classes and be fluent, the next week. It moves quickly when you're living in the country where people are speaking the language that you want to learn, and you're immersed in it and you're soaking it up like a sponge and all of that. So patience is a real key, and to also just have patience with yourself as you're learning. And finally, the last piece of the puzzle is confidence. And again, this is something that we talked about on our most recent live, but there really is this line that you have to be willing to cross, going from afraid to speak French, crossing over that invisible line to not afraid to speak French. And once you cross over that line, there's no real going back. You've ripped the Band-Aid off. You know what will happen if you actually try, so it's no longer scary. And from there, you can start to become more confident. One thing I want to mention too is when you're practicing and when you're being patient and when you're working on your confidence, don't get discouraged if a French person corrects you. Most of the time, I'd say 99% of the time, they're not doing it to be rude. They're not doing it to be mean. They're doing it from a place where they think they're being very, very helpful. Even amongst French people, they make corrections to each other's French. So it's not this thing where you should be embarrassed or feel like, oh my gosh, the spotlight's on me, everyone's making fun of me and everyone's pointing out everything that I just did wrong. it comes from a genuine place of, I want to help you. I love that you're trying to learn my language, and I'm just going to give you this quick correction to help you along the way. This is something that, like, to this day, my husband will still correct me, or my in-laws will still correct me, and I ask them to continue to correct me because I don't ever want to get to a place either where I'm like, oh, I know French now. I don't need any sort of help. I don't need any sort of corrections. Like, it's ultimately not my native language, and that's just something that you have to be okay with and to just not take super personally. I think that's a big part of the confidence piece of the puzzle. So once you've got those three things down, I think you will be in an amazing place to learn French, and I hope this video has been helpful. I always forget to say it, but please remember to like and subscribe. It really means a lot to us, and it will help us grow this channel even more. Thank you so much for watching, and as usual, see you soon, and à bientôt.